Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the coaching carousel. Hopefully, did a little bit of a wrap up on the coaching carousel. There's still a couple of stragglers that could send a absolute bomb into the college football world, but as of right now, I feel like we're coming to a relatively comfortable end. So hopefully, there's no craziness, and if there is, obviously we will talk about it on here. But at the end of the day, I do want to get into just how both these teams got here, how both the national title teams found their way to Atlanta and are going to face off in this game on Monday. And it was two very similar paths in a lot of different ways. Not perfect throughout a couple of different points this season, but found their way to play the best football at the right moment. So it's a lot of similar narratives throughout these two teams, but two very, very different teams, two very different attacks, two very different paths in a lot of different ways. So let's go ahead and jump into this thing, and we'll start with Ohio State and just do a quick overlook of the games that they played in the regular season. Not a lot to think of in the first 5 games there. Obviously, they very much dominated their competition, did not give up a lot of points. That Marshall game started a little bit slow, and people started to get a little bit worried, but they handled business there, had no problems, and moved on forward. They played great, great football. Then you got to October 12th, and everyone knew that that was the game that everyone was looking forward to. We were very much hoping that they both got in there undefeated. They very much did, and now it was an incredible battle. It was one of the best games of the year. They come out on the wrong side with just a little bit of a late slide from Will Howard. That obviously puts them in a weird spot. It puts them in a spot where you don't know how many games you have to win to get into the Big Ten championship. You don't know how many games you have to win to get into the CFP. There's a million different questions, especially with that Penn State game staring down. And then you come back after a bye week and you beat Nebraska by 4 points. And then you really have questions, and you're wondering, is this team even close to a national title team? Will they be able to hit their stride when they very much need to? Because it feels like they're waning at the very wrong moment. Then they go to State College, get that big-time win over Penn State. A little bit precarious at times, got down by 10, but controlled the majority of that game and really kind of handled it the same way they have in a number of years over Penn State. Purdue was Purdue at the end of the day. Northwestern was a team that just didn't have much of a shot in that game. Was a weird game over there in Wrigley Field, but definitely was one that Ohio State was going to win and definitely did. Carnell Tate's a little bit of a breaking out party in that game. And then you did have Indiana handle business there. A little bit of a scare early, but finished off very, very strong. And then the Michigan game came, and it was a lot of different questions about a lot of the different things that what was going to happen with this team. Was Ryan Day going to get fired before the CFP even started? Or if they lost to Tennessee, was he going to get fired and then he gets fired and all of the guys that came back for one more year are walking out the door with nothing to show for it? They wouldn't have the win over Oregon. They would have the win over Penn State, but that's become pretty routine at this point. They wouldn't have the win over Michigan in the last 4 years. They wouldn't have a Big Ten title. They wouldn't have a national title. And all of that is still on the table. As upsetting as that is for all of the Ohio State fans out there, everyone knows Ohio State has 3 goals any given year, as does pretty much any elite team in any given conference. You want to beat your rival at the very end of the year, whether that's Michigan for Ohio State or Auburn for Alabama or Alabama for Auburn, what have you. You want to win your conference championship, so you want to win the Big Ten, you want to win the SEC, the Big 12, whatever, and then you want to win the national title. Those are the 3 goals for Ohio State. Those are the 3 goals for Michigan, for Texas, for Georgia, for Alabama, for all of these teams, and Ohio State only has 1. They only have 1 that they could possibly get, and you're looking forward and saying it was a title or bust year. You still have the ability to get the title, but man, if you don't, there's going to be a lot of questions about what this team is going forward and a lot of questions around Ryan Day going forward. But overall, they made it through the regular season, 10-2, not the season that they wanted by any means, but they found their way into the dance. They got a home game against Tennessee, and then the juggernaut started, and they just took over the sport in a hurry. Ohio State wins 42-17 over Tennessee, 41-21 over Oregon, then 28-14 over Texas. A little bit of a tougher battle against Texas, no doubt about that. But these were, at the very least, 2, but probably 3 of the best performances that we've had all year. The first 2 were the best the team has looked in 2024 by a fairly comfortable margin. In a lot of different ways, they were downright unstoppable. And that team is the one that everyone imagined as we went into this year was this $20 million roster. it's going to tear people to pieces as long as Will Howard plays elite football. He really has down the stretch of the season, and he's been the biggest piece of this. If he can handle the noise, if he can bounce back and not make those big-time mistakes, he is going to be a guy that makes all the change in the world for this game and already has for the season. Has been a huge, huge effect on this team and definitely has been huge for this team as they've gone through what has been a weird season. Not the one that they wanted. You come up on your goals and you had 3 of them going in. You only have 1 of them ahead, but at the end of the day, you get that one. It's probably the sweetest one of the bunch. Although some people would argue that Michigan win was a little bit sweeter. But moving forward to storylines that they had to deal with throughout this year, the O-line injuries. Everyone's talking about Notre Dame's O-line injuries because they're a little bit more on top of the brain with a couple of guys that have gone out, but Ohio State has dealt with a lot as well. Josh Simmons was downright an NFL, maybe a first-round pick, and he might still be a first-round pick, frankly, at left tackle that forced Donovan Jackson to kick out there. Then you had Seth McLaughlin go down, and you're thinking, is this offensive line even going to be able to block anyone, especially the elite defensive lines that they were facing throughout the CFP? It was a huge worry for me, but they've handled business. They've done a great, great job, and it's definitely been a huge piece of why they've made this run and why they've been able to find a stabilizing force is Donovan Jackson's done great at that left tackle position, and a lot of the guys that have, Carson Hinsman's done a great job at center. It's been a huge, huge success for them, but obviously a big-time challenge coming up on Monday. And then the Jeremiah Smith show. This was the one that kind of stole everyone's heart throughout the year for Ohio State is they have an alien on their team. They have a guy that can do things that I did not know were possible and I don't think should be possible, but at the end of the day, he was a show all year, especially in the CFP, and he's going to be a guy that I'm watching very, very closely just throughout his career, NFL and beyond. I cannot wait to see what this kid can do, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. Go ahead and make a gold jacket because he's going to need it in about 15 years. And then the Ryan Day question. This was the cloud over the entire season. It was coming in. It was definitely after the Oregon game. It was definitely after the Michigan game. And they had to deal with it. All these players had to deal with it because they knew. They weren't confused about what Ryan Day's job security was going into this year. They weren't confused what it was coming out of the Michigan game. They were all worried. I can absolutely promise you that. They want this guy to be their head coach. They obviously very much like him and definitely play really hard for him. But you're on the doorstep of a national title now, and a lot of that has been earned back. But you lose the national title and you come up short of all 3 goals that you had. Even though you've played great football the last 3 games, you wouldn't have accomplished the 3 goals that Ohio State has to accomplish. So a lot of different things going into this one. More than anything, the Ohio State year was defined by resiliency in the regular season, just finding a way to get into the CFP, endure a couple of really tough battles. And then the CFP was just about anger. It was just about being as mad as can be about what has happened throughout this regular season and saying, we are going to tear you to pieces. And they have torn people to pieces. Now, Texas was able to put up a little bit more of a fight, but overall, the ultimate goal is still out there. You don't get that one, then all the stuff I just talked about, all the great things you battle through, all the great things that have come from this year do not matter at all. Then you move forward to Notre Dame, and their regular season was a little bit more straightforward than Ohio State's was, except for that Week 2 matchup. Obviously, it's been much talked about by this point, but NIU beating Notre Dame at the beginning of the season gave a lot of questions. There's no doubt about that. They were a team that it looked like they were in really, really dire straits after that game, and I think everyone understood, including them, that if you don't run the table, you are not getting into the CFP. They absolutely wouldn't have, as far as I'm concerned. They would have been kicked out for a team like Alabama, for a team like maybe Miami or Ole Miss or someone like that. I feel very confident in that. So you have a great win over A&M. You have some great wins over Louisville and over Georgia Tech. I think was a very solid win if you watch that one unfold. Obviously, the USC win at the end of the year was very nice, but overall, a lot of people had questions. A lot of people looked at the schedule and said, how impressive is it? Are they really going to be able to elevate their performance with the way they need to in the CFP? I had big questions about that as they went into the CFP, and they've been able to. They played really, really good football, but overall, I think it's one of those things that you hit that Stanford game. That was the game where it really just became lights out. They really started performing at their highest level. They started to tear through teams defensively. That USC game got a little bit away from them, but the reality is when you're facing Lincoln Riley, it's going to get away from you just a little bit. But overall, I think they're one of those teams that they played a couple of games that have looked a little sketchy at times, that Louisville, that USC game, and a couple others, but overall, they've been a really, really good team, and they made it happen after a Week 2 loss that they knew if they had one more, they were out of this thing. They were able to find their footing and play really great football down the stretch of this season. and it carried over into the CFP. They played great football throughout the last 3 games. Obviously, that Indiana game was a little bit closer on the scoreboard than it was on the field. Georgia 23-10, definitely a kind of defining win for this program and for Marcus Freeman. And then that win over Penn State, one that was absolutely crazy all over the place, but they found a way to get it done. And the biggest thing about this team is just they found a way to get wins. That is a thing that cannot be overstated, especially in this CFP format. Cannot be overstated how important it is to just find a way to get 3 more points, find a way to get 1 more yard, find a way to get that third down conversion that you very badly need. That's what these games are about. Notre Dame has done an incredible job of doing that throughout this CFP run. But we did have storylines throughout this. They're an injury-riddled team, man. They have been all over the place this year. It started with Charles Zagusa, who sounds like he is going to be the left tackle in that game, and we'll probably talk about that maybe on Monday. We'll just do kind of a quick wrap-up on that situation. But you had Charles Zagusa to start the season, then Benjamin Morrison, then Riley Mills, then Anthony Knapp. Guys have gone down left and right for this team. Very, very talented team, very deep team, so hasn't affected them too much, but it's been a year where they've had to battle through a lot of different things and a lot of different moments of the season, and they found their way to find their footing and play some really great football, especially on the defensive side of the ball without Benjamin Morrison and Riley Mills, who I would argue are the two of the 3 best players on that defense with Xavier Watts. Then you do have the 3-headed monster. The group of Riley Leonard, Jadarian Price, and Jeremiah Love have been as good as it gets in college football. They've been downright incredible throughout this year, and they've been a huge reason why Notre Dame just been able to be confident, being able to be who they are and be able to execute at a really high level. Is you don't have to be special when you have 3 different guys that can be special on their own. So you don't have to do anything special when it comes to play calling. Just let these guys do what they do, and they're going to get you a lot of great plays. And then the NIU storm cloud. This was a reality for this team, and it's something we've talked about, but they had to earn their respect back. They had to earn their respect back for all the people in the college football world. They had to earn their respect back for themselves. There's no doubt about that. And now you had that game against UGA and Penn State. That might have been the moment where a lot of people earned the respect back finally. But overall, that loss was downright devastating. It's the reason that they're here today. It's the reason that they've been able to battle back. And I'm not saying they should thank NIU. I am saying that Thomas Hammock being able to take down Notre Dame is a huge reason that Notre Dame is in this national championship. But overall, Notre Dame is a team that is just that. They're a team. They play together. They play 22 guys every single time. They are not scared to meet you in the hole. They're not scared to play really hard-nosed football. They execute at a super high level, and the reality is it's working for them. It's been incredible to watch, and both these teams have been awesome to watch throughout this year. It's been weird years. It's been a year that has not necessarily equated into all the things that they wanted to happen, especially for Ohio State, but at the end of the day, you still have that national title sitting right in front of you. You're 60 minutes away from being the team that's lifting that national title that lives on forever, and it's going to be incredible to watch, to talk about what's going to happen going forward. But overall, 2 incredible teams, and Anthony, you're absolutely right. That linebacking core is a huge reason that Notre Dame is in this spot, because the knowledge, the ability that comes from that linebacker core is so important, especially with the injuries that they've had throughout this year. But let's take our final break here, and when we come back, we got Wednesday questions. We'll roll through this relatively quickly, but we'll talk about some different things around the national championship, including can Notre Dame contain Jeremiah Smith right after this, so stick with us.